I think that self-awareness is absolutely necessary for a social worker in a family assessment setting. We all have our own personal worldviews, beliefs, and biases, and as social workers, we need to be able to identify them and set them aside when assessing new client situations. A self-aware social worker makes a sincere effort to understand how their personal belief systems might affect their ability to help their clients, and then take steps to mitigate that potential impact. It's important to also identify potential cultural differences and prepare for how your personal worldviews and belief systems may differ from your clients prior to the appointment, so that you go into the session already having identified where potential differences could be an issue. When working with families in particular, it's important to be open-minded about the different types of relationships, boundaries, and communications that families can have, depending on culture, religious beliefs, and their own personal backgrounds. Some things that are considered unacceptable or inappropriate in the social worker's culture may be completely normal in the client's culture. Just because a family operates differently than the social worker is used to doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing it wrong. Authentic open-mindedness will make the difference in establishing rapport and a trusting relationship with the family. In the family dinner video from Whiplash, I was initially struck by just how disrespectful the conversation was towards Andy. No one showed any legitimate interest in what he was doing and his accomplishments, likely because they truly didn't understand it. When the mom was talking about all the talent at the table, and she goes, "And Andy, with your drumming," you could see on his face how fake and forced that felt for him, even though he was arguably the most talented person at the table. It was clear that the family had established a feedback loop where they are often disinterested in Andy and his accomplishments while celebrating his cousins, and it was expected that he just sit quietly and take it. It seemed to me that this instance was the first time he had really spoken up and defended himself, which seemed to anger everyone else at the table. I was also struck by the clear distribution of power to the cousin who plays football simply because he's an athlete, as if his arguably minor achievements in football were somehow more important than Andy's incredible accomplishments as a musician, simply because football is seen as admirable in American culture. By speaking up and pushing back on his family's narrative, Andy is attempting to shift the power dynamic and take back some of the respect that he believes he deserves. This family dynamic contradicts a lot of my personal beliefs about what a healthy family looks like, although my personal experience with my family is unfortunately very similar to Andy's. Growing up, I often felt kind of like an outcast in my family because my priorities were academic and then later professional success, while neither my mom or my sister really valued education or just the concept of working in professional life. I can really relate to Andy's feeling of frustration around feeling undervalued for his success and overshadowed by his cousin's arguably less impressive accomplishments. It's kind of like, you just want to wave a flag and be like, "Hey, this thing I'm doing over here is really amazing. Can you please notice this for a second?" It can be really disheartening to never receive the validation you crave, and it begins to feel like disrespect. I think I would need to work really hard in this situation to avoid my personal biases towards the adults, as I feel like they have really created this environment with just very rigid perceived roles and rules for each child, which can feel impossible to break free of. I would have to be very mindful to try and delve into why this has happened and what events and circumstances in their own lives, both internal and external, could have helped to create this dynamic. In order to build an authentic relationship with this family, I would work to establish rapport with each of them individually based on their personal interests. And I might include anecdotes about my own experience, either as a parent or as a student pursuing a goal that the rest of the family may not understand. I think it's possible to relate to everyone individually without being off-putting to everyone else. And I think that the true authenticity in those interactions will help establish trust and help everyone understand that I'm on their side in this situation. In order to assess this family, I would utilize Minuchin's structural family therapy, which would allow me to understand the family's communication patterns, role definitions, and boundaries in a natural way. Per Hepworth, the goal of structural family therapy is to strengthen current family relationships, interactions, and transactional patterns. I feel that this is what this family really needs: better boundaries, more equal distribution of power, and just more respect in how they communicate with each other. After observing their interactions, I would be able to intervene and offer concrete strategies for how to modify their alignments in order to improve their relationships with each other.